Rolling.
Oh, okay. Surprise, surprise. All right. Well, welcome, Two Beards and a Bible. We're back, and my name is John Swano,
I'm Dave Tenney.
and we're going to be looking into the scriptures tonight. Dave is going to begin reading at Matthew 9, starting at verse 9. We'll let him go ahead.
Yeah,
and
we'll read
get
about
started.
Matthew here. He says, as Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax office. And he said to him, follow me. So he rose and followed him. Now it happened as Jesus sat at the table in the house, that behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and sat down with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw it, they said to his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? When Jesus heard that, he said to them, those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice, for I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Mm-hmm. Oh boy, well, that's a true thing.
Yes.
So it starts off with Jesus. So we're reading of Matthew, and Jesus, or Matthew recalls when Jesus first met him here. He says that Jesus passed on and he saw this man named Matthew sitting there, and he says, come and follow me. So he rose and followed him.
Yeah. Yeah, when we talked about that previously, we made that point that, he didn't seem to have any hesitation.
Nope. And it seems like that Matthew had him over to his house.
Okay.
As we read this. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That's what it's all in the same context. So, So Matthew has Jesus over his house, and a bunch of other tax collectors, obviously Matthew's buddies that he works with, they come over too, right? And the Pharisees are upset about this.
Right.
This reminds me of when Jesus is at the table and the woman anoints his feet and washes them with her hair, and the Pharisee says, if this guy knew what kind of woman this was, he wouldn't let her touch him.
Yeah. In a past episode, I mentioned that in working in the business world, sometimes I came across people that were just mad all the time, no matter what. And the Pharisees tend to fit that bill. It just seems like they were just always
They're always... As in Thomas the Tank, they would say he's always cross.
There you go.
So Jesus heard what he had said, that these Pharisees said, this guy eats with tax collectors and sinners, and he makes this true statement. Mm-hmm. Those who have no need of a physician, those who are well have no need of a physician, right? So you don't go to the doctor. Well, I guess today you go for a well visit.
Right, that's the only one covered by insurance.
Yeah, I went to one of those, and they were like, oh, well, how do you feel? Well, I feel fine. Well, then you must be fine. I'm like, well, that was a waste of time. I'll never do that again. Right. But that's a true statement. If you don't have any problems, there's no reason to go. If your car's running good, there's no reason to go to the mechanic.
Right. Yeah, and how does that? What is that? What are the ramifications of that statement? To the church today, that those that are well, that are righteous, they have less need to hear the word than those that are sick and
right,
sin sick, I suppose you would say.
Yeah.
So I mean, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't stop preaching and coming together and learning together more of the scriptures, but what should we be doing if the whole of our Christianity, if it is all involved in, well, I go to church on Sunday and I go to church on Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Well, okay, great. But, nowadays, how many people that are really truly need to hear the message are there?
Yeah.
We need to do that. We need to come together and build each other up, and we need to do what is commanded by the Lord to come together on the first day of the week. But that's not the end of it. We've got to go out there and find those people that need to hear the gospel.
One thing, a lot of times we put a lot of pressure on church attendance. Mm-hmm. And there's a man who I serve as a deacon with in our congregation. And one night he's like, I'm not going to be at services tonight. And I said, oh, what's going on? He goes, person I know, their car broke down, and I'm going to go fix it for them.
Right.
And I got to thinking, I'm like, well, we talked about it later, and he goes, I figure I would do more good if I had an opportunity to do something for these people, and maybe we have an opportunity to talk about maybe some spiritual things, being that it was Sunday night. He goes, I figured maybe I could do more good over there.
Huh.
And I thought, there's some logic to that,
There may be.
So,
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that could go both ways, but yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah, there's sometimes I think we, as you said, we've said this before, we put check boxes.
Yeah.
I did this, check, I did that, check.
Right. And we don't want to be those people that just confine. We get comfortable and we go in and we sit down, we do the things that are involved in worship, and there's really here's a statement that I've heard said that if you don't find yourself running into persecution in your life as a Christian, you're doing it wrong. So if we spend our time just solely around Christians,
yeah,
and then there's not gonna be much turmoil in our life because of that.
That's true.
So are we really fulfilling the will of the Father that we just close ourselves off from everybody else and don't go share the gospel with others? Now, that's not to say some people take that kind of thinking to the other extreme and say, well, I need to go into the bar and sit down at the bar next to so-and-so and have a drink so that I can evangelize to them.
Yeah.
That's carrying the logic too far.
Yeah, yeah. But there are, Jesus went to sinners.
Yeah.
And as we have opportunity to go to sinners, we should do that. And that's the reason I used that example is that's what this guy was doing. He's basically saying, here's a situation where I may be able to do something. Mm-hmm. So he took that opportunity.
Right.
And some may say, well, he forsook the assembly to do that, but I don't know if I agree with that. Mm-hmm.
When you think about Christ going to sinners, and he did, but he didn't take part in their sinful activity.
Right.
So that's the one thing we've got to remember. Yes, I can guarantee you that, down at the most unseemly establishment that you can think of in any town, there are, of course, those that need to hear the gospel. Yeah. Doesn't mean that we need to go in there and take part in the activity with them to share that gospel with them.
Right. Yeah.
So yes, absolutely. We need not be afraid to share the gospel and to talk to people that are, society even still today looks down their nose at people.
Yeah.
The guys that stand on the corner begging for money. How many times do we turn our nose away from them? But, those people need to hear the gospel.
Yeah. It seems like sometimes, when we are trying to think about, how are we going to grow the church? Mm-hmm. Too often we say, I need to find some people that are like me. Mm-hmm. Or so-and-so. So-and-so would be a good Christian.
Right.
And that's the wrong attitude.
Right.
A lot of times the people that may be most receptive are the people that are not necessarily like us.
Unfortunately, it does seem for mankind that we tend not to wake up and listen until it's almost too late, until we've hit rock bottom. And in many cases, and we see this, if you look across the world and look at how many people are, in these quote unquote third world countries that are just flocking to those that have a message of hope. And sadly, sometimes it's false teachers that buy a 747 and fly over there and teach falsehoods. But I can tell you, I know of faithful gospel preachers that are in some of those countries that are baptizing people 10 at a time. And it's I consider us to be fortunate if we have 1 or 2 baptisms a year.
Yeah.
And that's a sad thing that in our place that we are, people just don't seem to want to have that stomach for it. But they're out there.
Yeah.
And they still need to hear the gospel. And And we need to, as we go through our lives, we need to share it with them.
I know a friend of mine spent a few years working in Romania, and that was a hard work. He didn't have a whole lot of success.
Right.
And some places you're going to go, people are going to be receptive, and some people aren't.
Right.
It's just the way life is. It's the same here.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, let's continue on here.
Where do you want me to start?
How about read 14 through 17?
All right. Matthew 9 at verse 14. Then the disciples of John came to him, saying, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "Can the friends of the bridegroom mourn as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast. No one puts a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the patch pulls away from the garment, and the tear is made worse. Nor do they put new wine into old wineskins, or else the wineskins break. The wine is spilled, and the wineskins are ruined. But they put new wine into new wineskins, and both are preserved."
Okay, so they ask, so it says the disciples of John. So, who are, they're obviously Jews. They're probably more conservative. They say, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast so often, but your disciples do not?" And, I'm not sure how common fasting was back then. I think it was more common than it is today. Typically, the idea would be, I think the idea would be is that you would give up something physical to try to focus your mind and body more on God. I think that's the idea of fasting.
Right.
So Jesus says, he explains to them why. And he says that he uses the example of the bridegroom he used, and that would be himself he's talking about.
Right.
He says the friends of the bridegroom, he goes, they're not going to mourn as long as the bridegroom's with them. Right? So Jesus is with them. They're not going to fast, and they don't need to refocus themselves. They're with God right now.
Right. Take advantage of that while the time is.
Yeah. Then he uses these two examples about, why you wouldn't put a piece of unshrunken cloth on an old garment, and what do you think about those things?
Well, if we're thinking about, the fasting is something that is held over from the old law, from old times, and in fact, it's something that people kind of put upon themselves to do this, and maybe it became more of a tradition. And so when we think of the new law, Christ bringing forth that New Testament and the new law, it's you can't just put the new law on top of the old, or that's just not going to work out too well.
Yeah.
And the old law, as we understand, was done away with, and we have the new law. So I think it kind of speaks in that direction to, you can't mix the two. And in a way, I think maybe the people that are being spoken of here were maybe trying to mix the two. They were kind of maybe take their old traditions and bind them over into.
Yeah, and you saw that even with circumcision, as you read in the book of Acts. Where some of the Jews were trying to bind that on Christians.
And it lends to, human nature, I don't know about you, but I don't like change. I don't like to walk in the house and find that the furniture's been moved around.
Yeah, me neither.
That sort of thing, kind of grates at me. If Angela paints a room a different color, it takes me a while to get used to it. I eventually would get used to it, but we are resistant to change, and these people at this time are in that sort of transitional period, and new things are coming about, and it's always, we always want to cling on to that old stuff.
Some people use this example of the wineskins as another thing where they'll try to use this to justify alcohol use.
Oh.
They'll try to justify that, it's.
Well, as the fruit of the vine fermented, it did expand those wineskins and made them weaker and so on. And so I guess you could gather from that there would be some process of fermentation going on there.
And alcohol use is not banned in the Bible.
Right.
But drunkenness is.
Right.
So,
and to add to that, and maybe someday we'll have a episode on alcohol.
Yeah.
But the percentage of alcohol content that was back then, that was possible back then,
and then mixed with water.
Right. And it was and it was to kill the germs and everything that were in the water. I mean, if you go today and try to drink out of a stream, you might wake up with a tummy ache.
Yeah.
And so God knew that. And so these things that they were doing in the old times, that fermentation process did something to help in that regard.
Yeah.
And as we think about that, but to preface what we were saying earlier, Jesus never took part in alcoholic drinking. Even when he made the water into wine at the wedding of Cana, it was new wine.
Had to have been, because it wouldn't have made so much of it.
Right. So it was. So make no mistake, the Lord doesn't want us to go get drunk. The Lord, even though we see the word wine in the scriptures, look that up and see what the translations along the way kind of have lost that word.
And this isn't necessarily a lesson about alcohol.
No.
It's a lesson about the old law and the new law.
Right. Right.
I mean,
and that would be something that they would understand.
Yes.
Speaking of wineskins today, it doesn't really mean anything to us.
We keep our wine in a bottle, right?
Right. So when we think, speaking to those people then, this made perfect sense.
Yeah. We do understand the cloth.
Right.
I have had several pairs of jeans, and when we were first married, now I'm a real cheapskate, and I would say, Julie, can you patch my jeans up?
Uh-huh.
And the patch wouldn't last long because the jeans would rip around the patch.
There you go.
They didn't like that new cloth. So,
right.
It's definitely a truism.
Mm-hmm.
So where's our next point here?
Matthew 9:18 through 26.
Okay. I think it's my turn.
All right.
I'm going to read, I'll read through 26. It says, while he spoke these things to them, behold, a ruler came and worshipped him, saying, my daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live. So Jesus arose and followed him, and so did his disciples. And suddenly a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment. For she said to herself, if I only may touch his garment, I will be made well. But Jesus turned around, and when he saw her, he said, be of good cheer, daughter, your faith has made you well. And the woman was made well from that hour. Then Jesus came to the ruler's house and saw the flute players and a noisy crowd wailing. And he said to them, make room, for the girl is not dead but sleeping. And they ridiculed him. But when the crowd was put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl arose. And the report of this went into all the land. I think there's some more details in one of the other accounts of this. I'm just thinking about this when the woman who had the flow of blood.
Probably Luke.
Was it probably Luke? Okay. Let's look over there.
Isn't he the more detailed?
Yeah. Luke chapter 8. Let's see here. Well, nothing like dead air, John.
48. And he said to her, daughter, be of good cheer. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace. While he was still speaking, someone came in from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying to him, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher. But when Jesus heard it, he answered him, saying, do not be afraid, only believe, and she will be made well. When he came into the house, he permitted no one to go in except Peter, James, and John, and the father and mother of the girl. Now all wept and mourned for her, but he said, do not weep, she is not dead, but sleeping. And they ridiculed him, knowing that she was dead. But he put them all outside, took her by the hand, and called, saying, little girl, arise. Then her spirit returned, and she arose immediately, and he commanded that she be given something to eat, and her parents were astonished. but he charged them to tell no one what had happened.
What I was thinking of, John, is before that, he said, starts in verse 43, says, but he went, and the multitudes thronged him. Now a woman having a flow of blood for 12 years, who had spent all her livelihood on physicians and could not be healed by any, came from behind and touched the border of his garment, and immediately her flow of blood stopped. And Jesus said, who touched me? And when all denied it, Peter and those around him said, Master, the multitude is strong and press you, and you say, who touched me? But Jesus said, somebody touched me, for I perceived power going out from me. And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling, and falling down before him, she declared to him in the presence of all the people the reason she had touched him, and she was healed immediately. And he said to her, daughter, be of good cheer, your faith has made you well, go in peace. That's what I was thinking.
Okay.
The more detail, but yeah.
All right. So and so we see there just how powerful, just that belief, that faith.
Yeah.
That woman had.
I couldn't imagine, like, if you had some sort of physical problem that you had for 12 years, and immediately it was healed.
Right.
I mean, again, I think a lot of these things, we've never seen anything like this in our life.
Right.
I mean, I would be afraid. Again, all of these things, when you see actual real power over nature, I mean, that would definitely strike fear in those who saw that.
Yeah.
Or at least it should.
Yeah. And I think of, today we have those that claim they can do these things. And, notice what we see in this account, that it was pretty noticeable that something had happened here. They were sure she was dead. There was no doubt that she was dead, but Jesus was able to call out to her and take her by the hand and lift and bring her back.
Yeah, I mean, people think that there are still miracles today. I don't believe that.
No, right.
Miracles in the Bible, they were miracles. They were totally divorced of anything you could.
They ceased when the apostles and those that they had laid hands on have passed.
Yeah.
And today we have, and I don't know forgive me if I've told this story before, but in college we were sent to a religious group to study group dynamics. It was a psychology class, and so they sent us to one of these large sort of megachurch places. The guy had a healing service after the regular service. We stayed for the healing service, and I saw someone who had driven many miles came to be healed. And this charlatan knocked the guy over and said, "Demons out." And the guy came off stage and got back in line and got back up to the charlatan and said, "My leg still hurts." And so this, instead of, and this is how these dishonest people act, and what they do. They turned it around on that poor man and said, "Well, it's because you don't have enough faith." Yeah. Jesus never, and in any of these instances of a miracle taking place, he never turned it around on that other person and said, "Well, I can't do anything with you. You don't have enough faith." Yeah. We see here that this woman's faith was something that did, because of her faith and her belief that, yes, she was healed when she touched the hem of his garment, but we don't see Jesus turning it around on other people.
No.
His power is absolute, and it's 100% noticeable.
Yeah. I mean, when he raised somebody from the dead, they couldn't have any faith. They're dead.
Right.
So,
absolutely. And there was no doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. I think today, like I've had, like I remember having when I was younger, I was on the way to work and I was behind somebody slow, and I went to pass them, and I just barely made it. With semi was coming the other way, and I hit a black ice, and it was a bad situation. But somehow believe me, I was praying and somehow I got out of that situation. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that was a miracle. Right. It was just good luck.
Right.
Things worked out for me, but it wasn't a miracle.
Right.
And we can't confuse the two.
Right. And that's and we should realize just how fortunate we are when we have a situation like that.
Yeah.
It should cause us to think and to examine ourselves, as we go through life and have those wake up call situations. I mean, I've had some of those too, where in my younger silly days, had what I would consider to be a near-death experience with driving.
Yeah.
And that sort of made me wake up and take notice and make some changes.
Yeah.
And that's what we must do daily.
Well, let's wrap her up, John.
All right. We got a couple minutes left. So where are we going to go now?
Well, we're at almost 26 minutes.
All right.
So
let's see here. Where do we want to keep reading here? You did through 37?
Yep.
All right, so I'll read a little bit further. Now the man from whom the demons had departed begged him that he might be with him. But Jesus sent him away, saying, "Oh, we're in the wrong. I don't think we want to be there."
No.
Yeah, because we're in, that's Luke. Now let's go back. Well, yeah. Wait a minute. We can go through, what is that, 56? Yeah. Well, you know what? We never did talk about Jairus' daughter.
No, we didn't. Let's talk about that, and then we'll finish up.
Yeah, let's do that.
It seemed like we were saying.
Yeah.
So here's this fella, and his daughter is dead. So obviously she can't have any faith, right? Mm-hmm. So what's Jesus say to her? He says, "Little girl, arise." And it says her spirit returned to her. What's it tell us about our spirits?
Yeah, that they depart from our body when we pass on. Yeah, and it is our spirit that lives on forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people have asked. I say, what is your spirit? Well, when you're not talking and that voice there's a voice inside of you. That's your spirit.
Yeah, it's that consciousness.
Your mind.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what today we would call it your mind or your consciousness or whatever, but that's what.
And I don't think our conscious nature. I don't think even today medical science understands how our brain, holds what it does and how it works. Brain. We've come a long way in medicine, and doctors understand the inner workings of our brain a little bit, but not completely.
No.
We still can't. Think of the most powerful computer today, and it doesn't even come close to what the human brain is able to do.
Oh, not.
And those things are just kind of beyond our understanding, and exactly how that spirit is held in to our body, and at what point it releases. We don't really know those things, but we know that our the eternal part of us lies in that spirit.
It does, and when we die. That returns back to God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Some people, teach that when you die, you immediately go to heaven or hell.
Right.
And that is totally wrong.
Mm-hmm. Because that would be, that wouldn't be to use the word fair to those that, so that would mean that some people spend more time in heaven than others, and that's not what we see in the scriptures.
Jesus says that someday there's going to be a judgment, and we've read about this many times. A lot of the parables are about this very thing, and that's what state when we die, what state we're in. I imagine. I mean, there's only a few accounts in the Bible of somebody dead and they came back. I want to say what is it, Elijah? Or no, it had been Elisha, when Saul prayed, and I think that's who it was.
And Lazarus.
Yeah, Lazarus.
Was raised from the dead. And I guess you could say that girl that we just spoke of.
Yep.
Jairus' daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, Christ has that power to do that.
Yes.
And but we think of what's the who is it Lazarus and the rich man?
Yeah, the rich man and Lazarus.
So when we think of Lazarus and he's in Abraham's bosom, which is where people from in the times gone by in the Old Testament, that's what was pointed to, the Hadean realm, the place of comfort for those souls that have passed on. They go to that place of waiting, I suppose you would say. And so he's in Abraham's bosom, and it's told that the rich man looks and sees the comfort that he's in, and then says, "Permit someone to go back and tell my family." And what is he told? He
says, even if one arose from the dead, they wouldn't believe it. Listen, Jesus rose from the dead, and people still don't believe it.
Right. Yeah, and they also said that they have the law and the prophets.
Yeah.
And us today, we've got
the written word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's enough for us to believe, and it's what we have, and it's the way that God chose for us to
understand His will.
Understand Him. Yeah.
All right, John.
All right. Good enough. Well, thanks for joining in with us here today. I think I know I've learned something, and hopefully it's been a good, edifying experience for you. We urge you to check us out on Spotify if you haven't already. And perhaps if you're on Spotify, you're spared looking at us.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, we're glad that you're here with us.
I'm the one that looks like Patrick Swayze in 1985.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's if you're looking at my picture.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing.
You don't like mullets?
But anyway, thanks for being with us. And Lord willing, we'll be back next week. We hope you can join us. Two Beards in the Bible signing out.
Yep, thanks.